Welcome to the 2023-2024 NBA Deep Dive Series, where we're going from every single team in the NBA from worst to first, from 30th place to first place, where we do have the Portland Trail Blazers coming in at number 22, a string of red teams. Now, the Trail Blazers, of course, are in a fun spot because when is Damian Lillard going to get traded? Is Damian Lillard going to get traded? Are they the best team in the NBA like they started last season? Are they still a rebuilding team? They have a bunch of veteran players like a Yusuf Nurkic and a Jeremy Grant, but then they have the youth moving going with Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe and who'd they pick up? Scoot Henderson. So they were shamelessly taking a large stretch of last season, and they had some good players stand out, most notably in a Shaedon Sharpe. Now, they do need a legit co-star and a new coach if they want to be competitive again with Damian Lillard. I don't know if that's the direction they're going to go. I would just float the possibility of going to say, hey, Milwaukee, listen, Giannis is going in a different direction. Don't you want to go in a different direction too? I will trade you Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, 4 first-round picks. You give me Giannis. And I'm just imagining that sort of pairing with a team that looks like, what would that be? Damian Lillard, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic, Nas Little, maybe Matisse Thybulle, and then Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm just saying, there's a possibility where this team could keep Damian Lillard and look competitive. But we are going on to break down this team as is. Now, just full disclaimer, if they're trading away Damian Lillard, they are the 30th ranked team in the NBA. I ran the numbers. Their rating comes in at like a 75 or something. They're just bottom of the barrel without Damian Lillard, who is propping this team up mightily. But they're coming in at 22nd with that 78.72 rating, which is... it's good, not great. Damian Lillard being one of the best players in the NBA, being one of the best point guards in the NBA is certainly propping that up. But they did finish 13th in the Western Conference last year, which is how they got a little lucky in the lottery, getting that number 3 overall pick. And they are coming down from last year's power rankings of finishing 17th, which is tough because they need to pick a direction. Are they going to be really bad, or are they going to try to keep Damian Lillard? Does Damian Lillard even want to stick around? That's all it is with this Portland Trail Blazers offseason. Where does Dame go? How much do they get back? They don't want Tyler Hero, so who's going to have to be traded away? But looking at some of their losses for this offseason, Drew Eubanks is gone, and he's an undersized, hardworking center. Not a great player. It's not good riddance. We appreciate the effort he gives, but he's just not a very good basketball player. Well, guys like Jacques Lindell can come out and give you a little bit better effort and performance. Cam Reddish going over to the Lakers, getting a contract. He didn't have a career revitalization, but he was certainly better than he has been for the Hawks and not playing on the New York Knicks. And then the surprise cut this offseason was Trendon Watford, who's been a really reliable, steady player, especially as a younger guy. They don't normally come in and give you the kind of performance that Trendon Watford did. So we appreciate everything he's done. He's now on the Brooklyn Nets. Unfortunate, but I think the Portland Trail Blazers saw that they have a similar skill set guy in Jabari Walker, who's a little younger, who's a little more athletic, and who might have a little higher upside. So we'll just roll with the younger guys. That's all about the Portland Trail Blazers right now, is moving with the younger guys, with the more athletic guys, which is why they get Scoot Henderson, number 3 overall pick, potential number 1 overall pick in some other drafts. The dude is a freak athlete. He's one of the best prospects we've seen in recent memory. He just kind of forgot how to shoot the 3, and we'll talk about that when we go into him. Chris Murray, brother of Keegan Murray, twin brother, similar skill sets. For whatever reason, though, he's a lefty, and that's why he's shooting almost 10% worse than his brother. Jeremy Grant is coming back, and then the second-round pick, Ryan Rupert. Of course, all of this is hinging on where does Damian Lillard go, but for now, Damian Lillard still on the team, the best, most highest-rated player that we've covered so far in this Deep Dive series. He was elite last year, 32 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 37% from the three-point line. Dame time was real. He had a PER of 27 almost. I mean, he's not a 50-40-90 last year, but I'll take a 46-37-91 season. Played 58 games, and this team was absolutely rolling when he was playing. And then he went out with injury, and then the team collapsed without him, because that is just how the Portland Trail Blazers are constructed. With Damian Lillard, they're going to win a lot of basketball games. Without Damian Lillard, they're going to lose a lot of basketball games. So for Damian Lillard, what separates him from being like a 99 overall, and this is tough because when you talk about the best players in the NBA, you have to nitpick, is that he's the greatest deep shooter we have in the game. I think he's better and more consistent than Steph has been recently. Not a better three-point shooter, but from the hash, from 40 feet out, it feels like, Damian Lillard is knocked down. He's probably in a dead heat with Klay Thompson for being the second best shooter ever in the history of basketball. He's clutch. He's a killer. He's a fan favorite from his commitment to this awful Blazers franchise, but his defense is less than adequate, which makes sense given his size and offensive workload. He's got a defensive rating last year of 121, the year before 120, the year before that 118, 117, and it's been a far cry from his earlier seasons where he was in the 110s, the 112s as a defensive rated player. He's still a good player. It's not worth trying in the regular season. That's totally understandable for a guy of Damian Lillard's caliber. And he'll come up small in the playoffs. He's got a pretty abysmal record, both with the underdog teams and with the favorite teams. And everybody loves and appreciates Damian Lillard, but he's just never been good enough to carry a franchise a la Nikola Jokic, a la Giannis Antetokounmpo. And time is starting to run out for him as he's going into his age 33 season. And that contract keeps getting a little bit more expensive. But Damian Lillard, one of the best players in the NBA, probably second best point guard in the Western Conference, depending on what your definition of a point guard is. And last year was a career season from him, from basically sitting all the season before with that, I think the core injury, which is one of the worst that you can get in the NBA. And then last year stepping out for 20 so games and then basically sitting the latter half of the season. He's going to be well rested and ready to go on a playoff run for whoever trades for him. But Damian Lillard, not going to be on the team for long. Who is around him? And that starts with Anthony Simons, who completely showed out. He went from being the 24th overall pick a couple seasons ago, being a decent shooter coming off the bench, to being electric. When he got his chance to shine, he averaged 17 points, 40% from the three-point line, and then 21 points, 37% from the three-point line last season. Anthony Simons is a bucket. He is a great scorer. He's not much of a facilitator, though, which is a problem for this team. His assist to turnover ratio last year was about 2-to-1, which is about in line with his career average. And the problem with Anthony Simons is that he's not a great facilitator, so he's not a true point guard, and he's undersized at about 6'3", 6'4", and he cannot defend. It is a problem that this Blazers franchise has been dealing with for a long time, but no matter how you cut it, Anthony Simons for his entire career has been a negative defensive player, and that's playing him at the two guard or the point guard, really. Anthony Simons is a liability out there on that end, and I think the premier role for him is going to be coming off the bench being a scorer. But he is a really good undersized scoring guard. Nightly basis, if you give him a full workload, he's probably a 25-6 guy, one of the best catch and shoot shooters in the NBA right now. I think somewhere the stat was that he's shooting 40% on catch and shoot threes from deep. I mean, he is a knockdown shooter, and those guys are rare, but he's got to go to a team that needs shooting, and he's got to fill a role where he doesn't have to start, because if he's starting around a whole bunch of short guys or defensive liabilities like Jeremy Grant and Damian Lillard and Shaedon Sharpe to a lesser of an extent, and Yusuf Nurkic isn't there to clean up that mess like a Rudy Gobert can, it's a problem, which is why even though he's putting up stellar stats, efficient shooting, his VORP is only a 0.5. So that's the spiel on Anthony Simons. Just like CJ McCollum does not fit alongside Damian Lillard, is too talented, worth a little too much to just be a backup point guard for the Portland Trail Blazers, who are going in another direction. And then you have the Scoot Henderson dilemma. So time will tell what's going to happen with Ants. Moving on to the next player, who is Shaedon Sharpe, who's one of my favorite players in the NBA. Shay is dynamic. Sometimes you can just see that a player has that rare NBA gift, and Shaedon Sharpe is one of those dudes. The dude can jump out of the building. You see his highlights. He goes up for the dunk, and instead of coming back down to earth, he elevates another half a foot before he yams it on the defender, draws the foul. Now, his game is raw, and I'm not sure how I like his development track fitting alongside Damian Lillard, but Shaedon Sharpe has the capacity to be special. I think he's got a very similar skill set to Anthony Edwards. He averaged about 23 a night to close out the season, the final 10 games, 40% mid-range shooter, not great, not terrible, decent handle, doesn't have a great first step or blow-by speed despite his crazy athleticism. He's not a great playmaker or passer compared to some of the other guys in the league, but when he gets his chance and he gets his minutes, he was scoring in bunches, and he's built like that perfect prototypical guard, 6'6", 7-foot wingspan, that Michael Jordan variety, and man, can he fly. Now, he is young. He made the jump straight from high school to the NBA, to the pros. So the fact that he basically skipped a college season is part of why his athleticism is so raw, because he has that relentless freak athleticism that Jalen Green can jump for days, but he needs polish. His shot making is improving, and even from last season to this season, even mid-season last year to the end of the season, you can see that he's getting better. His platform is improving. I didn't see him take as many off-balance shots just in the summer league alone. He can splash from deep. He's learned that sidestep three from Damian Lillard. I've seen it in his game. He's going to be special. Shaedon Sharpe just needs time to grow and develop, and this is only his second season. He's going to be 20. Meanwhile, a guy like Victor Wembanyama, I think, might be turning 20 or is already 20 years old, and he's a rookie this year. So Shaedon Sharpe has youth on his side, has limitless athleticism on his side. He has the potential to be literally anything, to be, like I said, Michael Jordan Jr. He just needs time to develop. Now, his defense isn't great. It's not for any lack of tangibles. It's more of effort. It's more of discipline. It's more of staying in front of his man, helping out correctly in the passing lanes, making the right rotations, all things that are going to come along as guys develop, because he's only been in the NBA for one season. He didn't play a minute of college ball, get that strict coaching. So that's all going to be reliant on head coach Chauncey Billups and what he does with his team. But somebody else who doesn't play defense for the team is Mr. Jeremy Grant. But Jeremy Grant did get paid, and Jeremy Grant hit a couple game winners last year. And Jeremy Grant was honestly impressive ever since he had that big breakout season for the Pistons. He's just been good, man. He plays with strength. He plays with aggression. He'll barrel into the paint, put up a shot, draw a foul, take a mid-range jumper, even shoot 40% from the three-point line. Jeremy Grant has been a really impressive player who was kind of a nobody role player for the Nuggets before he got his chance. Now, despite earning $20 million a year, his VORP isn't great, and that's because of the lack of defensive ability. Is he a 4? Is he a 3? He doesn't have a lot of athletics gifts anymore. And last year, his defensive box plus minus was at an all-time low, negative 1.4, which is why he's actually coming in with a negative box score last year, despite averaging 20 a night for this team. He's just not a great positional defender, not a great help defender. Doesn't rim protect. He's about 6'8". I mean, he gives you 0.8 steals per game, 0.8 blocks per game. It's just not a great effort all around from Jeremy Grant. Now, he has proven to be a decent defender in his career. He is 6'7", 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan. He just has to put in the effort and have to actually want it night in and night out for a regular season, which is rare for Jeremy Grant, which is why he left Detroit. He got sick of losing. So Jeremy Grant, it's going to be interesting to see how he meshes and gels with this team that is looking to go in a different direction. Similar to a Yusuf Nurkic, all things being equal, because Nurk is an okay player, and that's really about all you can say with him. He doesn't have any athleticism whatsoever. He's a big Bosnian baller who can actually shoot the three pretty well. He's developed that part of his game to where last year he shot 36% on pretty high volume. You look at the totals, he kind of teased and played with Portland Trailblazer fans saying, oh, maybe I can shoot the three. Shot 56 2 years ago, 30 the year before, 10 the year before that. And then last year was 43 of 119. That's almost one and a half. He only played 52 games last year, so 2 threes a game, and he's making them at a pretty decent clip. That's good enough to at least be a threat and offer something on the offensive end, because he is pretty limited beyond that. He doesn't have a great post set. He's not a great defender, doesn't have great athleticism. Part of what this team has been struggling with in the pick and roll game is they have no lob threat, because Yusuf Nurkic can't jump, and then they never draft or sign anybody who's 6'10" or taller and can actually jump you out of the gym. They only go for the undersized scoring combo guards. That's just been the Trailblazers' curse forever. But Nurk isn't a terrible defender. He's smart. He rotates well. His feet aren't great, and he only averages, I mean, you look at his blocks per season, it's like under 1 block a game the last 2 years. And then before that, 1.1. Had a decent year in 2020 with 2 blocks a game, but for the most part, he's not going to be a rim protector. He's just going to give you his best effort. And as the NBA has expanded to more three-point shooting, Yusuf Nurkic has been more of a liability on the defensive end. And honestly, they go small a lot with Jeremy Grant playing the 5, or even Nas Little. So this team has a couple directions they could go. You look at this, though, their starting lineup isn't bad, which is why they do come in at 22nd. Imagine if you could flip Anthony Simons for like an OG Anunoby and then get Yusuf Nurkic out for, I don't know, somebody who's a little more athletic at the 5. I'm just saying, you do that Giannis Antetokounmpo trade for Damian Lillard, they've got the shooting, they have the theoretical defense and playmakers and a solid bench behind them. This team could be good. It's just a thought experiment. But if Damian Lillard is gone, then we will talk about the rest of the team, starting with that man, Scoot Henderson. Now, Scoot Henderson was the number 3 overall pick, but he was the second best prospect in this draft class. And it was theoretical that he could have been a better player, a better prospect than Victor Wembanyama, despite the fact that he's almost a 1.5 feet shorter. Scoot Henderson is a dynamic player. He's got a really strong mid-range jumper, which is why me and many other NBA scouts weren't worried about his deep ball. He shot 14 of 51, 27%, but on really low volume. He's a crazy athlete. He's got incredible start-stop quickness, no doubt the second best player of the class and a #1 overall pick most seasons. Just the way he takes his step back three, I'm not worried at all with the smoothness, and the way that he has a consistent mid-range jumper. I just wasn't worried about Scoot Henderson's game from deep. Now, in the summer league, I only saw a few reps of his because he got injured, and that's another possible concern, is that he does deal with injuries every now and then, ticky-tack. I think he sat out the last half of the G League season, comes into the summer league, gets hurt again, and y'all know with these explosive undersized guards, injuries are always a problem. But he is a tick undersized, not short, but a legit 6'2", and that's going to be a defensive liability. Look no further than Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons, and he does have a weird shot. It is very similar to Jalen Hood-Schifino of the Lakers, is that he has this really straight back form, which makes his step back rhythm jumpers much easier to make, but then he misses the wide open, you're supposed to make these jumpers. We'll see what the Portland Trail Blazers coaching and shot doctors do with that. But it was funny to watch because a step past 20 feet, his touch is gone. He has to use his body and his arms more. Within 20 feet, he's money from the mid-range, and he is explosive enough to get to the rim at a high level. Now, his playmaking needs to improve because he averaged 3.5 turnovers for the G League Ignite, which just is not good enough. I know 6.5 assists looks good. You look at his counting numbers for a young point guard, 19 years old, you say, oh, 16, 6, and 5. That's more than good enough for your point guard, but he's got to shoot for them three better, and he's got to cut down on the turnovers better. He's just a really raw, explosive player that's going to need some time to develop, and if he's going to be stuck behind Damian Lillard, that is a problem. So this two-path journey that the Blazers are on right now, until they make a trade and get some younger guys and give all the reps to Scoot Henderson, is going to be a concern for this team. Moving on to another crazy explosive player is Keon Johnson, and it was only a few years ago that he set the verticality record for the NBA Combine. The dude can fly. Now, I was a huge fan of his game coming out of Tennessee. He's just a super raw player that needs reps, which is hard because he's an undersized scoring god on the Portland Trail Blazers squad, but he has incredible athleticism. Similar to Scoot Henderson, he's got really strong stop-start quickness. And I know it feels like he's bounced around the league a little bit, but he's only been in the NBA for 2 seasons. Went to the Clippers, they traded him away in the Norman Powell trade, and then he came over to Portland and just didn't really earn a lot of minutes. He got 25 minutes in his sophomore season for the Blazers and then only 10 minutes a night last year. And his stats weren't terrible. He gave you 9 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.8 turnovers, so the assist-to-turnover ratio isn't great. The 3-point shot is coming along slowly, about 34%, which isn't as bad as I thought it would be, especially given his young age. But he's just a minus player on both sides of the court at this point. Doesn't have the defensive ability that you'd expect from a guy who's really this athletic, doesn't have the offensive versatility. He does have a good mid-range jumper, though, that I was actually pretty impressed by 2 seasons ago when he came over to Portland. He just shows that he has the hang time and a little bit of that Kobe Bryant elbow jumper that might be worth something in today's NBA, but he just needs to go out there and get more reps. He's an all upside type of pick, project type of player, going to be on the roster for a couple more seasons, and he's just going to be part of this young team alongside Shaedon Sharpe and alongside Scoot Henderson and alongside Anthony Simons. You just need to see who they're going to develop in 3, in 4, in 5 years, and Keon Johnson is just at the beginning of his career. Matisse Thybulle is up next, and I was just happy to see a hardworking guy go to another team and play better. Sometimes all these NBA guys need is just a change of scenery. Matisse Thybulle's 3-point shot was what was keeping him off the court most of the time in Philadelphia. He just could not knock the 3 down consistently. And then the second he went to the Blazers, he was money. And I can't tell you how upset Philadelphia 76ers fans were. Now, his offense is basically nothing. He needs to offer that PG Tucker corner 3 to be good enough to stay on the floor. 36% is good enough, but you want to see that closer to 37 to 38, maybe the Bobby Portis 40% from deep. And while he is a really good defender, his defensive style is a little bit weird, which is why he had a 116 rating on the defensive end when he came to Portland versus career average 110, 108, 103, 106 defensive player of the year caliber numbers. It's because there's a great breakdown video about this, but his strategy is to get beat off the dribble easily, but then trail, play with his defensive instincts, block jump shots if the shooter tries to go up and elevate in front of him, so he gets you uncomfortable. He's a pest. He's more of a free safety defender. He can switch 1 to 4, but he requires a big to rotate down, something that Joel Embiid was really good at and Jusuf Nurkic isn't as good at. So he's kind of dependent on the defensive system that he's a part of. And part of the issue of why he was a negative defender goes to the scheme that Chauncey Billups has set up, where he's kind of asking guys to fit into his system instead of fitting a system to fit into his guys. So that's going to be an interesting development as we see this next upcoming season for the Portland Trail Blazers. But Matisse Thybulle, nothing but upside, finally played well. Might be getting a little bit overpaid. We'll go over that in the salary screen, but he's going to be a good player for a long time for this Trail Blazers team. Moving on to Nas Little, who has been a project player for a long time. And I think we can finally say Nasir Little is mediocre. He's okay. He's good enough, but you'd like to replace him. He's a Royce O'Neal. He's a Dorian Finney-Smith. He's okay. He had a good season last year overall. He just dealt with an injury in the middle of the year, but he shot a career high from 3, which is good because he's finally getting up to that league average 37%. He's always been a quality defender with that freaky long build. He's like 6'7" with a 7-foot wingspan. But he's just a fringe guy, and last year was one of his worst seasons as far as the defensive end is concerned, but then it was one of his best seasons with the 3-point shot. So you're just a little torn. Career average from 3, 23% rookie year, 35%, then 33%, then last year 36%. So will you sacrifice some of that defensive versatility so that he's actually shooting the 3? Sure, but you'd like to see him be that penultimate Dorian Finney-Smith kind of guy who can start at the 3, who can start at the 4, who can come off the bench and give you defensive effort and stretch the floor. He's the perfect prototypical modern big, just needs to continue to develop that game. And surprisingly, I'm shocked just looking at this, he's only going to be 23 next season, which is bizarre because he feels like another guy who has been around the league forever. But I guess that's what it feels like when you're a Portland Trailblazer playing Trailblazer basketball. Last guy on this rotation is going to be Jabari Walker. Now, this is less to do with Jabari Walker than it does Trendon Watford. They cut open a roster spot getting rid of Trendon Watford, and I was actually surprised because Trendon was really solid for them, coming immediately out and being an instant starting 4, starting 5, basically a versatile whatever they needed for the big. He was smart. He played both sides of the court well. He shot good enough to be up there on the court. He's just not a good defender because of his lack of lateral quickness. So he's really got stuck on that 6'8" undersized 5 role, which isn't ideal. But Jabari Walker is going to be taking over that role for him. And he's a really high effort guy, decently talented, has a little more athletic upside than Trendon Watford, which is, I guess, why they're going in this direction. But I just don't know if his 3-point shot will ever hit consistently. And that's what you need to see from these guys who are 6'8", 6'9", is they have to stretch the floor. And he has some weird issues these bigs have where his release is on the way down of his jump shot form, which is difficult to replicate consistently. What's his last name? Evan Mobley of the Cavaliers actually has that similar issue. But Jabari has really good size. He's a really great energy, one of those just hardworking blue-collar guys. Not great decision-making, but he's a good athlete. He's a great team defender. He rotates well. He's just one of those jack-of-all-trades type of guys that any team could use. I just don't know if the downgrade from him to Trendon Watford was really worth saving the couple of dollars that they were going to. And that's just a point of concern with these lesser talented teams. Moving on to the rest of the roster, and they only have 13 players on the roster right now as of this recording, and that is because they're waiting to see what happens with Mr. Damian Lillard. So it's understandable that they haven't gone out, filled out the roster, gotten 21 guys like some of these other teams have. But that means they have a very limited deep bench. It's Chris Murray, Ryan Rupert, Moses Brown, and a couple of two-way players. I think they have a couple of Exhibition 10 contracts too. Those have been interchanging. But as far as Chris Murray is concerned out of Iowa, he's interesting. Despite the fact that he's left-handed, unlike his twin brother who is right-handed, I see a lot of similarities in their game. I just don't see the NBA polish that Keegan Murray had, especially that 3-point shot only falling at 33% in college is part of why he doesn't go number 4 overall. His defense isn't good enough. He doesn't have the agility, the effort, like I'm repeating, the polish to stay out there as a 4 or even as a 3. His shooting isn't good enough to space the floor. He doesn't have great balance, not a strong basketball IQ. I think every single game he got beat by a couple backdoor cuts that are easily preventable if you're just, paying attention, but he just doesn't have that NBA concentration, and he really gets off balance a lot. He's got to learn about that NBA gather step. Too many times I saw him jumping too early, jumping off the wrong leg, trying to make a tough shot, and there is some talent to his game. So I think he's got a lot of potential stretch 4 upside for this team. He just needs to develop his game. This development team for the Portland Trail Blazers has a lot cut out for them. Moving on to the next guy, who is Mr. Ryan Rupert, the 2nd round pick, and he's one of the classical upside athletic picks. I'm not sure if he's going to get any minutes because he is a horrible shooter, 23% from the 3-point line, 35% from the field, and just whenever he has the ball, he's an immediate turnover liability. But in his shot form, his elbow flares out too much. And just from watching his game, he's got pigeon toes. His feet go inwards in his normal walk pattern. I'm wondering if that's part of his awkwardness on the court, why he's just such a lanky, awkward guy walking around, flying out there, hopping. But he's a strong defender, and he really loves on-ball pestering defense. He just has no handle to his game whatsoever. So he's got to be in development for a long time. I think he's another young 19-year-old dude. So this Blazers team is filled with young, athletic, talented guys, and you just add Ryan Rupert to the list, somebody who's got the frame. He's like 6'8", 6'9", has the wingspan, has the athleticism. Just what can he offer you as far as the mental game is concerned and the shooting game? And right now he's just not there yet. Gonna have to see how good he gets down the road. They did bring up Moses Brown, who was like their first 7-footer in years, and many fans remember Moses Brown because I was watching some draft coverage and some Portland Trailblazer coverage, and everybody can remember when he was like a minus 17 in 4 minutes. He had an immediate 2 turnover, like 8 points in 30 seconds, brain fart in the regular season. But as far as Moses Brown is concerned, he's just an interesting big a couple of years ago. He's got that great size that everybody's looking for. He is a legit 7'2". He has no strength and is a complete liability on the offensive end, complete liability on the perimeter, cannot move his feet at all, completely awkward, but he does give you good athleticism, good rebounding. Look at his per 36 numbers. Even for his career, they're pretty solid. 16 points, 15 rebounds, 1.8 blocks. He's just a turnover machine, a really awkward dude, and he cannot shoot the free throw to save his life. A career 56% free throw shooter who normally shoots in the 40s, which is going to be a big liability. Came over to Brooklyn last year and played like 6 minutes, but for the most part, he's been developing slowly. He just hasn't had a stable place to go and develop and kind of figure out his body and figure out his game, because he's a really young but awkward 23-year-old who needs time to develop. But that is going to be it for the rest of the team. And then I said they have the 2-way contract players in Ibu Baju and John Butler Jr. For Ibu Baju, he's one of the more interesting prospects that they have on the roster. I don't see it as much in John Butler, but Ibu is a decent looking center out there, at least for the summer league. He's got really good size, really good effort. He's not a great player. He doesn't offer too much offensively, but he is a bit of a lob threat, has a really nice wingspan, but he is listed at 7'1". And next to Moses Brown, he kind of looks more like the classical 6'11", 6'10" guy who tells everybody he's 7'1". He got completely outworked in the Victor Wembanyama game and committed like 8 fouls alone on him. He just really struggles to deal with the perimeter, struggled to deal with Victor Wembanyama's athleticism, which is understandable. That's why Victor went #1 overall. And he's also got to watch his feet. He's at a risk for flagrant fouls on jump shots every single time. And he plays a really heavy drop coverage where he gives up a ton of jumpers. Even DJ Wilson was cooking him from the elbow because he was just giving up that jump shot way too easily. He's not a great defender, but he does have the size, and this Rip City team has been looking for a big for a long time who can actually give you a little athleticism and a little rim protection. Ibu Baju gives you that plus effort. John Butler Jr., really not sure if he's going to be in the NBA for a long time. He's just this really tall, long, wiry kid. He can be a stretch 4, can be a stretch 5, has that kind of Chet Holmgren, Victor Wembanyama build where he's really tall and really awkward, but has the size and versatility to not be a liability on the defensive end. Just need to see more development from his game. I don't expect him to earn too many minutes unless the Trailblazers go really deep into their bench, but they are going to be coming in at that coach and culture ranking where I do have them at tier 4, even though the new GM Joe Cronin looks to be doing a pretty good job. The owner has always had their issues, which is why the Portland Trailblazers are always rumored to be getting sold. Chauncey Billups, yet to be seen what kind of head coach he is other than slightly below average. And just for the culture, I'm not really sure what the Blazers are trying to do with their franchise until this season. Finally, they said, you know what, screw it. We'll see what we can do in trading away Damian Lillard. I don't even think they want to trade Dame. And you never know with this. But Chauncey Billups is a tough coach because he tries to force his team into playing his basketball scheme instead of vice versa. I'm not sure if he's going to be a bad coach down the road. He is in his first job. I think this is his second or his third season. I like his demeanor and I like his leadership, but they're just going through a lot of bad stretches of basketball, not making the right adjustments. The roster's a mess, and this team has just repeatedly gotten unlucky. If you look at it, Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum don't make a great pair. Trade away CJ, who steps up? Anthony Simons, who's literally the second coming of CJ. Don't make a great pair. Then they go into the draft, and who falls at 7? Shaedon Sharpe, and nobody knew that Jeremy Sochan was going to be one of the best basketball players in that entire draft. So they get the next best guy, who is a scoring combo guard. And then who do they get in this draft? Well, it's certainly not Brandon Miller, 6'8", 40% three-point shooter. No, they get the 6'2", 6'3" Scoot Henderson scoring combo guard. So they just had a tough stretch of luck getting the right guys in the right places. Normally you don't draft for fit, but at the end of the day, this team has struggled to find an elite wing player, which is why they're paying Jeremy Grant $20+ million a year. But looking at their salary, they're going to have to figure out some things, what they want to do with their team, because right now they're over the cap. Luxury tax is complicated, but they're not paying deep luxury taxes, but they are dealing with expensive contracts, because roughly a year ago, they said we're all in on win now moves. So Damian Lillard going to be earning $45 million going into $63 million in the 2026 season. Jeremy Grant is locked up with a player option in 2027 at age 29. Anthony Simons got that contract. I think it's worth it. I'm not opposed to paying him about mid 20 million for a young 20-year-old guy who has proven he can score in bunches. And then Jusuf Nurkic, I thought the contract was bad, but hindsight 2020, especially with the way that the salary cap keeps going up, $16 to $20 million for Jusuf Nurkic isn't a bad deal. He's a good center, great lane filler. And then you have Matisse Thybulle. That's where you go, oh, that contract's maybe a little too much. That's a win now contract while they're looking to rebuild. But then Scoot Henderson, rookie. Shaden Sharp, rookie. Nas Little, really solid $6 million contract. Chris Murray, rookie. Keon Johnson, rookie. Moses Brown, minimum. Jabari Walker, minimum. Ryan Rupert, rookie. So they got a lot of good contracts at the bottom of this team, but the team is basically looking in two directions. They're going in one way with one eye and one way with the other. Like Steve Buscemi, they're saying, we're trying to rebuild, but we have a whole bunch of win now players and win now moves, which is why they don't even get a projected win total when you look at their Las Vegas odds, because it's all dependent on where and when Damian Lillard gets traded. But they do have championship odds, and it's really, at the end of the day, is this team going to trade Damian Lillard away, get a whole bunch of draft capital, or are they going to trade for a superstar talent, try to say, let's keep going all in and try a couple more seasons? And I think either direction is the right move for this Portland Trailblazer team. They got to pick one, because they have a ton of young assets, and they have a superstar point guard who's just waiting for his co-star like he has been for the last 10 years. But that is going to do it for the deep dive for the Trailblazers. I know Damian Lillard has finally requested a trade, and it's most likely he's going to be gone, but I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there as an NBA analyst of my own. Imagine if they went out and got him a superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo, for example, or a Joel Embiid. Just saying. But that is going to do it for this episode. Let me know what your thoughts are, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one.